Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to another funky episode of the Single Parents Podcast. This is the podcast for anybody whose life may have turned out a little less than traditional. We're back again. You got Anthony, you got Steph. We're chilling in Steph's backyard yet again. Just vibing, hanging out. Neither of us have our kids with us right now, so we're kind of just doing our thing, right?
Yeah.
But so I've just kind of been chilling, doing my thing all weekend. But you've been working a lot.
Yes.
Yesterday you worked the florist job, but last night you did your bartending thing, right?
I did, yeah.
How was that?
It was fine. Honestly, it was a good for like my first shift back in so long because there was a good little like rush of it being busy, which I was like so nervous. Honestly, I've been bartending for so long. Like I know how to make pretty much anything like the back of my hand. But after not doing it for so long, I was like, oh my God, like what if I'm suddenly bad at this? But it actually went really well. I, jumped right back into it like I never left, but had a good little rush, but I wasn't stuck there too late. So it worked out really well. It still made for a very long day yesterday, but
I'm sure.
It could have been much worse, so I'm grateful.
Yeah, because I think I went to the store a couple times and I drove by and it didn't look like it was like as crazy as it could be for a Saturday night.
Yeah, I was out of there before midnight, which for a Saturday night is definitely. The bar I work at is more of like a beginning of the night kind of bar, so we're never open super late. So usually I'm out of there by like 1 a.m. at the latest, but I did not want to be there till 1 a.m. last night, so I was grateful.
Do you have any like crazy stories of bartending that come to your head right away?
Oh, luckily there hasn't been too much crazy stuff that's happened, but my favorite story is it was summertime and we have like like outdoor tables so people can sit under the awning and hang out in the nice weather. And we had a couple groups of people sitting outside, and this lady who was under the influence came by, and there was actually a police officer that I'm friends with was sitting out there. He was off shift. He was hanging out, just having a drink. And she walked by and started threatening everyone with a knife.
Oh.
Which in the moment was not funny, but now it's funny looking back. And he was sitting there and I'm sure he was like, oh my God, like my one night off and now I have to deal with this. So he was sitting there and he actually recognized her because I think she's like a regular at the jail, especially, if you're just walking around threatening people with knives, you probably are a regular. But he ended up having to get up and he knew her by name and she was coming at people with a knife. So he had to throw a chair at her and it was...
Whoa, oh my God.
It was very dramatic. And I honestly was just inside working. I didn't even know anything was going on until I saw police lights outside. And I'm like, it's never a good thing when you're bartending and you see police lights outside your bar. I'm thinking someone got into a fight in the alley or in the street, which we don't really have a lot of fighting at our bar, but I'm like, who knows what happened? So I go out there and there's like a ton of cop cars and everyone's just kind of like sitting there looking kind of shell-shocked. And I looked at my friend and I was like, what's going on? And he's like, she was trying to stab us. So I had to throw one of your guys' chairs at her.
Oh my God.
And I was like, how did I miss all of this? Like, I just was inside, like probably doing dishes or something.
Lame.
But yeah, that's probably my craziest story. There's been, some instances of crazy stuff, but that's for sure my craziest story.
Makes sense. Are you, what kind of bartender are you? Are you the just like no nonsense one? Are you the kind who's like flirts to get the extra tips?
I will take any tips I can get.
Nice.
But I would say I kind of teeter. It really depends on the vibe because especially the bar that I work at, we work by ourselves. I don't know if you go in there very often, but it's a small bar. So unless we have an event going on, it's just too crowded to have more than one bartender. But drunk people will really try to push their limits when they think that they can get away with it. So when it comes to it, I am extremely no nonsense. I have kicked a few people out. I have 86 people. Like, I will do what I have to do because I'm never going to let that turn into an environment where just like all hell breaks loose.
Yeah.
But I tend to be like more of like a fun bartender. Like I'm going to like hang out and, chat and whatever. But sometimes you do have to, people actually when I do have to kick someone out, the people are like, that is like, I didn't even know you could be like that. But
yeah, well, you're a mom, so sometimes you gotta
the mom voice really
put
comes
on that
out.
mom voice and be like, no, not today, not here.
And it works. The mom voice works for everything. It really does.
Fair. Well, I'm glad that you're here on the show. I was just mostly worried that you were going to be working super, super late and that you're going to be too dead to record today. So I'm glad that
it worked out pretty perfectly, actually.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, glad you're here. Glad you all are here. You listener, you out there, whatever you're doing, maybe you're on your way to work, maybe you're in a nice hot bubble bath and you're listening to my voice. Hope this is soothing as you lit your candle and you maybe got some wine and you're just letting your day just flow out of you.
Turning into an ASMR
podcast.
I know.
I guess we're going to switch genres a little bit. Hopefully, or I don't know, maybe you're listening to this as you're cooking dinner and you're trying to figure a lot of stuff out, whatever it is. Just glad that you are here. We appreciate you. We love you. We see you. We're thankful for you. But before we get into all the stuff we have for today's show, a few things I'd just like to ask you to do. The first thing is just to share the podcast, if you'd be so kind. Share the podcast with your family, with your neighbors, with your bartenders, with everybody, just so we can continue to spread the show around. Get more voices, more opinions, more thoughts, more perspectives on the show. And that's always a good thing. It's always a good thing to have more voices. So spread the show around so we can do that. And then also for you, this is super easy. Takes like literally less than a second. It's free. Just hit the subscribe button. Make sure you ring the bells, turn on notifications, YouTube, your favorite podcast hosting platform, all the things, so that way you never miss an episode in the future. And then last but not least, only do this if you think this is worthy, if you feel so inclined to do so. Just leave a nice little tasty review of I don't know why I said tasty. I couldn't think of another adjective. But you leave a review, please. Leave a nice little review of the show on your favorite platform, wherever. Because those stars, man, they tell the algorithms that the show's legit and it spreads the show around. That's how we continue to grow as well. So please do that. Tasty reviews. That would be great. All right. I need to start bringing what is it? The book called A Thesaurus.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
The adjectives. I need to expand my vocabulary a little bit. I don't know.
Just got to read more.
I got to read more. Just like you and your 16 books. One day. I'm still working through, my little rabbit book. I have a little rabbit book I said I was going to read.
Did you get into that?
I'm on page 3.
Oh, good job.
So I only have, there's only 8 pages total, but
you'll get there
I'm almost
eventually.
halfway. So I'm going to figure out how the rabbit tricks the fox in the end.
Something to relate to.
So I sent you a video. What was it, last week?
Sure, yeah.
Maybe,
yeah, it was
who knows?
last week. It was last week.
Time really just flies.
Know.
But what this video was, and I loved it, but it was this guy who was cooking dinner and just taking a video. And he was talking about how he, on a regular basis, will ask his kids what he's doing well as a parent and what he can do better for them as a parent. And I sent it to Anthony because I was like, this is honestly so cool. I love that he did this. I love that he's taking the initiative to actually ask his kids, what can I do better for you? And I think that that's not something I've ever really thought of doing before. Right. So we were kind of chatting about it and got onto the topic of, what we think we could possibly do better or areas that we think we could improve as far as our parenting and our parenting styles go.
Yeah, this is, this one's been humbling because I was talking to my 8-year-old a little bit this week about this topic just to see what she had to say about how I can improve, things I need to work on, whatever. And she was so sweet. She just kind of first looked at me and she's like, I think I asked her hey, is there anything I could be doing better as a dad or something like that?
Yeah.
And she looked at me and she's like, what? No, you're awesome. You're great. You're perfect basically. And it made me feel good, but I was like, I want to talk about this on the podcast.
Give me something,
please, something I can use for the people. And so finally she's like, okay, well, if you really want something, you could do a better job at giving me more allowance. You can give me more money. And I was like, Ev, come on. I'm like, no. Like, what? Like, there's nothing.
She really saw her opportunity and she took
She's
it.
like, wait a minute. Because I actually pulled out the video you sent and I showed her.
Yeah.
And because in the video that talks about like making pancakes or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I was like, anything? And she's like, oh, well, okay, after school you can like get me a drink. I'm like, oh, okay. So like I can like make sure you have water after school or like smoothie or something. She's like, no. You can take me out for like soda or something out after school. Basically like go spend money on me. Like let's go get like a treat every day after school.
She's honestly a smart girl. She's like she's like, if you're asking, I'm going to tell you exactly what I want.
I did ask.
Yeah.
So I mean but it was first off, it was like, and I was texting to you about this earlier, humbling because if you would have just straight up asked me the answer to that question, I would have had like a laundry list of things I like could do a better job. And I was like not nervous to hear her answer, but I was curious to see because I already beat myself up a lot, and I've talked about like my sense of guilt before on the show and how I struggle with that. So I was like, all right, which one of the many things is she going to bring up? But when she kind of like looked at me and she's like, no, like you're a great dad, you're awesome. Like I don't even know what like I don't know. Like it made me feel, I guess, good and humbled because in my head, all the stuff I beat myself up about, not saying that they may not notice some of the stuff, but they don't take it as hard, or they don't see it in the same light that I see myself in. They just see me as like, hopefully in their own 7 and 8 year old way, like to see me as a dad who just loves them and doing his best and whatever. But anyways, I was like, okay, well, that's her perspective. But what legit, all the guilt and all the whatever, the reality is I'm not a perfect parent. I'm not, I don't have everything figured out. So like just being honest, what is something I can work on? And I think for me, the big thing is I could work a lot. I could be a lot better at kind of relaxing sometimes and just enjoying the moment with them without getting so caught up in my head about the future, and not even just like the future, but like a list of things I need to do and need to get done and need to get accomplished, that I just get so caught up in all of that not only do I just forget to enjoy the moment, but I also just take on a lot of like stress and a lot of anxiety. And because it's just me in the house, as far as the only adult goes, I don't have anybody to have some of those adult conversations with sometimes. For example, like I'm going on like a trip out of town later this week. And so I have to think about like, okay, so I need to make sure I budget enough money for the trip and make sure that we leave at this time and all these things. I'm just thinking about this trip that I'm getting ready to have. And so I don't have anybody to like share some of these thoughts with who can be like, well, okay, like, well, we can do this, or let's think about it like this, or calm down. Like, it's not that big of a deal. So I just internalize all that stress. And what I'll do is I'll sometimes, I guess, project a lot of that stress on to them for unfair reasons and for things that really like they'll do that's not that big of a deal, but I'm always already so tense and stressed about stuff that I'm figuring it out that I don't have anywhere else for it to come out. Well, I do. I just don't let it come out anywhere else in a healthy way except on them. So like, for example, they just got new bikes not too long ago, but already their bikes have just gotten like some flat tires. Not really their fault. It just happens. And so this happened like last week a couple of times, and I just like got a sense of annoyance about the whole situation, and maybe even like made them feel like it was their fault for getting flat tires on their bike when it wasn't. Not really because I was annoyed about that, because I was annoyed about like, or not stressed about other stuff.
That all the other things.
I projected it on to their flat tires.
Yeah.
And so I made that more of a bigger deal than it needed to be. And I didn't respond to that situation with the appropriate level of emotional engagement that it really needed to be, because 2 flat tires on a bike is not really that big of a deal. And so I needed to do better. I was actually listening to a podcast on the way here, and the host was basically like, hey, like, I hope you all just like have a good day, and remember, like, in the context of like life and the scope of the universe and the scope of history and all these different things, that the stuff that you're stressing about, like, not saying it's not important, but like, it's not that big of a deal in the scope of...
Right. When you think about it in the grand scheme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like in 100 years, is anybody gonna like remember that you were stressing about a trip down to visit your family?
Right.
No. Like, and it's 6 months even. Are you gonna even remember the fact that 6 months ago you were stressing out? Like, no, you're gonna forget about it. You're gonna move on. Like, it's not that big of it. So I just like, you know what? Like, I need to do a better job at looking at whatever else I'm stressed about. All right, I'm stressed about, we have parent-teacher conferences coming up this week, and that schedule combined with their normal school schedule means that their school schedule is not going to be normal this week.
Yeah.
So they're going to be home while I'm working because of all that stuff. So instead of like being anxious about that and stressed about the fact that I'm going to have days where I'm trying to work where they're going to be home, I can just be like, is it really that big of a deal? Like, who cares? Like, and again, in 6 months, you're not even going to remember that you had one day where your kids were home while you were trying to focus on work.
Right.
In the grand scheme of the universe, it's not that big of a deal that like, and so contextualizing what I'm going through in the grand scheme of life and then hopefully by doing that contextualization, I'll be able to learn how to like relax, take a breath, be in the moment, because all I'm doing when I am getting caught up in that immediate stress about every little thing is that I'm just missing out on a lot of those moments that I have right now with my girls because I'm mentally thinking about a million other things, or I'm not fully present because it's so in my head. So just really just trying to be like, you know what? It's not that big of a deal. We'll figure it out. We'll get to Thursday when they're not in school and I'm trying to work on Thursday. It's not Thursday yet. So for right now, let me enjoy my kids.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and I think kind of along the same line as you, it kind of does come down to when I'm feeling really stressed, it does come out in like a lack of patience, I think. And I was really thinking about this, and I actually was having this conversation with my aunt the other day because we were talking about, you know, like having that certain level of like anxiety. And then I don't know with, you know, other people, but her and I kind of are the same. It comes out for me in kind of like I get really snippy and like just really impatient. And I was talking about how I try really hard if I can like feel myself entering into like that mindset. I try to just remove myself from the situation because I know that it's not fair. Because like a little thing, kind of like you talked about with like the bike tires, will just be like, it's like that tipping point where it's like, I cannot deal with this right now. And I realize, and like even like when I'm doing it, I realize like, okay, it's not fair for me to take all of this stress that I have in my life, and this was just the small little tipping point, and now I'm taking it out on her.
Yep.
And so I really work really hard on trying to remove myself from that situation. And sometimes it's hard to do that. Like sometimes when you're really in that like super stressed out, like one more little thing is truly just going to push you over the edge. And sometimes it is really hard, especially I think as a parent, because especially when you have younger kids, they're like always there. And you're
yeah.
So it's just like, just the dumbest thing. And then afterwards you're like, oh my God, like that was so out of pocket for me to even respond like that. And I think that that's something that I like am constantly actively working on. And I think for the most part, I, you know, have my anxiety pretty under control. And so it's not a super common occurrence anymore. But when it does flare up and I'm like, it'll just be like something so dumb. Like Olive didn't put her cereal bowl in the sink this morning, you know, like little things like that. Or like, I remember specifically the other morning, and it's usually in the mornings because it is stressful getting her up, getting her out, getting the dog fed, getting him put away, getting her to school, getting myself to work. Like it's always a lot. And especially if she wakes up in a bad mood, and then it just kind of like the whole morning is just a wash at that point. But the other morning specifically, like we were kind of running a little bit late for whatever reason. And one of the biggest things, and God love her, but this child will never put the milk back in the fridge. She will, and I'm like, I could deal with you leaving your cereal bowl out, but please, for the love of God, put the milk in the fridge. Like, So the other morning it was like, we were like running around, we were running late. Olive gets really flustered, and in her brain, like, time does not exist. She is truly like, love her for it. She's really just out here living her life.
Nice.
But she has no concept of time whatsoever. So like in her brain, she could have 10 hours in the morning to get ready or an hour. It would make no difference to her. She's going to do it at the same pace. And so we're like running late, and I'm like trying to get out the door, and I look in the kitchen and the milk is sitting on the counter. And I was like, you have got to be kidding me. And of course it was like a way over the top for like me having to walk to the kitchen and put the milk in the fridge was not the end of the world. But I was like, you have to start putting the milk away. Like, I am so tired of, like, it was so out of pocket. And then afterwards, like, we got to school and I was like, I'm really sorry that I like got so frustrated. But, when we're running late and these things happen, I just get really frustrated. And I'm sorry that I got so upset with you. And I, always try to make sure she knows, like, hey, I'm taking responsibility.
Yes.
That was like a little over the top and whatever. But it's really probably one of the hardest thing as a parent to like check yourself when you're in that situation and take responsibility for it, I think.
Yeah. So you think that's also a lot similar with me? Like, that's the biggest thing that you have to work on as a parent then too?
I think so. Honestly, I think that just patience in general.
Patience, yeah.
Like, it's really, and I have gotten so much more patient, like the older I've gotten and the older Olive's gotten, but just those like little moments of like, okay, I lost my patience. The reaction did not equal what actually happened, and taking responsibility for that. Yeah,
I think what I've tried to preach to myself, I guess, is that, especially, again, you're the only adult in the house, so not a lot, but everything's going to fall on you. Especially when you have younger kids. When you have like older teenager kids, then it can be divided a little bit more when it comes to like responsibilities and stuff. But when you have younger kids like us, like there's only so much that they're able to even practically do.
Yeah.
And so like I've just had to remind myself, like, you know what? Like, since everything's falling on you, you need to do a better job at like picking your battles, I guess, within yourself. Like, not with your kids or with whatever, but just like, okay, so same with the milk. I had the same thing kind of situation, but not with that. But my younger daughter, Maddie, she always just like loses her shoes because she'll come home and she won't set them down. She'll like kick them off and they go random places, and then they get covered up by blankets or go behind something. And so whenever it's like, hey, get your shoes, we got to go, she's like, well, I don't know where they are. And so it takes forever to find where she flung them across the room. And so that happened the other day, and we couldn't find one of the boots. And so like I was just like going, and so I had to eventually, same thing, go and apologize to her because I was just like overly stressed about trying to find this one shoe. And if I would have calmed down and actually just like took a breath, I probably would have found it a lot sooner than my huffing and thumping across the house and being over dramatic about it. Yeah, and when you're like frustrated like that, you're not even like actually looking, you're just tearing stuff apart. Yeah, I should. But anyways, I was like, so. And the grand scheme of your day was like, it really, because it took a lot of mental stress, physical stress, because then once I finally found the boot, I felt myself being like tense. Yeah. Because I had that all anxiety, and like now, like I was all flustered, and we had to go to like, I don't know, wherever we were trying to go. So annoying. Like, honestly, it really is so annoying. So I had to be like, was that worth it, basically? Was that, like, you have a lot of other stuff that you have to deal with that might be valid when it comes to like really like expending a lot of your energy. But was finding that boot and getting upset over that boot worth all that energy that you expended in that half hour or whatever? Yeah. So I just had to like, I need to pick my battles and within myself and be like, finding a shoe, priority, like not worth this. Like something else. Like I having a sick kid that you have to go figure out how to care for, or something happened with your car or money stuff. Like maybe that takes a little bit more energy because it's more valid. But like I can't always be at a 10 for every little inconvenience that pops up in my life. Otherwise, I'm always going to be not just stressed, but then, like I said, I'm going to miss out on those moments that are supposed to be like calm and legit with my kids because I'm always like functioning at a 10. Right. So, yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think it's really easy to
when you get in that like stressed out mindset to truly lose the big picture.
Yeah.
And it's just like that in that moment does feel like a big deal. And then hindsight's always 2020. You're like, oh my God, like I totally overreacted. But it is, I think, just really hard. And I think it is too, like, sometimes it's easy to forget that like kids, their brains obviously don't work like ours. And so to Olive, like the milk's not even on her radar.
Oh, yeah.
She's eating her cereal. She's playing with the dog. She's thinking about what she's going to wear for school. Like she doesn't care about the milk. And I'm like, I care about the milk because I know how much it costs. And I know,
Yep. Yeah.
you
true.
know, like, but it's funny because sometimes I do forget because I'm like, why can't you just do this? But then when I really think about it, I'm like, she doesn't care about that. And she's not going to care about that. So at the end of the day, in most mornings, almost every morning, I walk in the kitchen, I see it sitting on the counter, I grab it, I put it in the fridge. I don't even say anything because I'm like, one day she'll put the milk away. One day she'll do it. But today's not that day and I'm not going to waste my energy on it. But in those moments when you are already kind of like flustered, you're already feeling a little high strung and it's just like one more thing on top of everything, it is really hard to take a step back and picture, like see the big picture and realize like this truly is such a minute detail of my entire day. But it's something you just actively have to work on every single day, all day, every day.
Especially when you're in like co-parenting situations like us,
right?
Because our time is now just naturally cut in half with our kids because they'll go off and spend a chunk of time with their other parent. And so like that's also something I got to remember is that, hey, like you have your kids for this week, which is only, technically if you look at the month, you have them for 2 weeks out of the month. That's how my schedule works. And I think yours is about the same.
Yeah, I'm a little over 2 weeks, but pretty similar. Yeah.
It's a certain amount of time. So like take like think of it 2 weeks out of the month. So you only have them basically, I guess that's like 6 months out of the year is what it comes to. So you have them for like half the year if you think of it like that. So my time with my kids is already limited compared to some other situations. And now you're using some of that time to stress and to take yourself out of being present and to do all these things because you're worried about stuff that really is not that big of a deal.
Right.
So like, do you want to waste basically this limited time that you already have with your kids stressing out about stuff that's really not that big of a deal? I just got to remind myself about that sometimes because usually, like you said, hindsight's always 20/20. It's usually, when they go to bed and I'm just kind of sitting there and they're sleeping and I think back to the day. I'm like, why did I? And then usually in the morning I have to like go and like, hey, like, I'm sorry. Like that's what happened with the beats. Like the next day I had to go have a conversation with Maddie and apologize. But it's for sure, though, happens during the weeks when they go back to their mom's house because now I'm really just sitting there being like, well, I wasted a whole lot of time with them last week. On some stupid stuff.
Right.
And now I just want them to come home. But then when they get back,
it all starts all
cycles,
over again.
So I don't know. But what do you all think? What are some things that you can do better as a parent? Or maybe you actually, you know what? Maybe you have some advice for us as we kind of were just open and honest about things that we need to improve on. Like, sure, we're the host of the show, but that doesn't mean we have everything figured out. Like, we're real life single parents just doing this thing, especially us with younger kids. Like maybe those of you with older-ish kids have things that you would recommend or things that you would like to suggest to us as parents of younger kids. Whatever it is, we want to hear your thoughts, your opinions, share your voice, and you can do that through the socials, but also you can use the email, thesingleparentspodcast@gmail.com. That's thesingleparentspodcast@gmail.com.
Something to think about.
Well, we appreciate when you all share your voice, share your perspectives with us on the show because we want this to be a community and not just us two yapping at each other for an hour. So we're always going to highlight certain things that you all either ask or suggest or write in. And we actually had one of our viewers basically leave a comment asking for help when it comes to figuring out how to have a social life. So I saw that comment, I read that comment, I thought about that comment, And I just decided I don't know. I suck at, maybe this should have been part of the first segment when we had the things we need to work on, but I am very, very bad about having a social. I've admitted that already, probably a few times on the show already. So I'm gonna defer to Steph because I feel like maybe she'll correct me, but I feel like she's a lot better at figuring out how to be a single parent but also have a social life than I am. So I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like I even know how to come close to answer this. Steph, help us out, please.
I think, well, first of all, I mean, it's really going to depend on what your situation is. So like we've stated multiple times, both of us have 50-50 custody with our other parent. And so I do have, 2 weekends a month that I, don't have to worry about childcare or anything like that. But I do think even if you're not in that situation, find yourself a reliable person to provide you childcare on, a semi-regular basis. And I think I've kind of touched on this on one of the other episodes that I almost said watched, one of the other episodes that we've recorded. But try really hard to lose that like babysitter guilt.
Right.
There is nothing wrong. I mean, I'm not saying you should go out every single weekend and whatever. I mean, if you choose to do that, more power to you. But I think it's so easy to like have that guilt of like, well, if I get a babysitter and go out, then like I'm going to miss out on this night with my kids or whatever it may be. But I think truly it's so important to give yourself those moments of adult social interaction. And even if that's just like joining a book club or learning a new hobby, like go to a pottery class or go to the gym, go to a workout class, like whatever it may be, having a social life doesn't have to be like going to the bars on a Saturday night. You can find a gym class that you like on Wednesday afternoons, and most gyms have childcare centers in them. And then you get that adult time, you get that hour of your life. Maybe you make some friends in your class that you're going to. Mm-hmm. And then the biggest thing I think a lot of parents in general don't do is maintain those friendships.
Right.
So you maybe make a friend, you go hang out, have coffee, go to brunch, whatever it may be, but then you guys kind of just like let that fall off after that. I think something that myself and, my close friends do is, even if I haven't hung out with my friends in a week and a half, we check in with each other. Like, hey, what are you doing? Do you want to go get dinner this Thursday? Like, how's your week? Or like if something funny happens, we send that text and just like maintain that level of contact where it's not like we're texting each other all day, every day, 24/7. But it's like, oh, I had the funniest thing happen to me at work. I'm going to touch base with my friends, share this little detail of my life. You're making that connection and you're maintaining that connection. And then I think it's less stressful when it comes to like, okay, well, now we have to make plans, and like you already have that open line of communication. It feels more natural just to say like, oh, hey, I'm free this Thursday. Let's go grab dinner if you're free. And then you're always kind of maintaining that connection and that friendship. But I think it's really easy, especially as parents with everything that we have on our plates, it's really easy to let those types of relationships kind of fall off first.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest thing is just holding yourself accountable and figuring out what relationships are important to you and actually putting the work in to maintain them.
I think that's good, because I think one thing that I have struggled with and need to just kind of make some mental adjustments about is the fact that back in the day, I used to be like Mr. Out and About, super social. Like, I still have friends. I'm not saying I don't. But like I was thinking about this the other day. Like, I was like, you know what? There was a time where I was like rarely home, and I would be out to like 2 a.m, like it was nothing. Or I would have friends over to 2 a.m. We would be joking around making. And so obviously, now that I'm a dad, especially a single dad, I can't live like I was when I was in my early 20s anymore. But I think one thing that I think I've said on the show, like I'm very like black and white, 100% or zero. So in my head, I'm like, well, I can't function with my friends like that I used to when I was 20. So I guess now I'll just kind of not do anything because I can't, be Mr. Cool Guy out and about cruising around till 2 a.m. And I think that is something I just need to adjust in my head that, yeah, you're not going to be like that guy anymore, but that doesn't mean you can't still do something.
Right.
And I think also I need to get better at like those quality relationships you're talking about, investing the ones that I'm able to maintain while also like having my kids.
Right.
Because I think sometimes I also get in the mindset of like, this week when I'm with my kids, that's 100% dad, like can't do anything, can't hang out with friends because I'm dad mode. But next week when I don't have my kids, then you can hang out with me. But like finding people who are like, hey, like I don't care if you have your kids, like come bring them or hang out, like I have my kids, they can come hang out too. I think I need to get better about that as well. But I also, like you said, it's quality though, because that can be tricky because there's some people that I like hanging out with, but like I wouldn't necessarily like to hang out with them if I had my kids, or my kids just don't like hanging out at their house or whatever. So it's like more of a chore to hang out with them when I have my kids than is it if I just wait. But I know for some people in their context, if people who have their kids all the time, they don't have like a co-parenting situation, maybe they have to make that adjustment of like, hey, if you want to hang out with me, you got to know like I'm a full-time single mom or single dad. Like unless I do get like a babysitter or something, you're just gonna have to wait for that. Finding those relationships and people who are like, that's fine. You can bring your kids.
Well, and I think you made a good point too, is like finding those friends that you can bring your kids with you. Like go have a brunch day or invite them to go, sit at the park with you while your kid plays, and like finding those relationships, even if they don't have kids of their own. Like I think you'll find that the more you reach out and the more that you put yourself out there, it's just like with dating. Like you have to be willing to put yourself out there to have those relationships. And I have, I think I've said before, like very few of my friends have kids. Like a lot of my friends are single, single women, and they all know my daughter. They all have a relationship with her. Like we do, Thursdays for the girls. We do girls' night every Thursday.
Nice.
And even if I have Olive, like girls' night looks a little bit different. Like girls' night is dinner instead of going to the bar to have a drink. Like, so it's finding those relationships where you are comfortable with them around your kids and they can be a role model for your kids, as well as being someone who's feeding into like your need for the social aspect of things.
So like if it's like a Thursday nights are for the girls. If you have Olive, you wouldn't necessarily like cancel that just because you have Olive. Because I think for me, being honest, I would have said, all right, well, sorry, I can't do Fridays for the boys because I have the girls this week, but next week. But you're saying like, it doesn't matter. You would still do
you
it.
Just adjust your reality, which when I have Olive, we don't do every single Thursday.
Okay.
But, like if it's like just this last Thursday, we all went out to dinner together. And Olive was there. We all hung out.
Yeah.
And I think it's important too for Olive to see like those interactions too. And to, it teaches her how to build relationships and how to, just be in a social environment. And rather than just, unless she's at school, she's only ever talking to her mom, which
that's true.
I think I'm pretty fun to hang out with, but it's good for her to have a little variety in her life.
Yeah, that's really encouraging to hear. I think that gives me some stuff to think about, because I think what I just need to do is kind of assess my relationships that I have and think about the ones that I truly could invest in, regardless if I have my girls or not, and then letting them be a part of those relationships. I would feel safe and comfortable, because I've had people tell me this even recently, like hey, we want to like hang out, whatever. And I'm like, oh, I have the girls. And they're just like, okay, and like, come hang out. Like, I didn't ask you if you had your kid, but so it's mostly me.
Yeah.
I'm the one who's putting those stipulations on hanging out. I do legit have people who are like, I don't care, bring the girls. Like, we'll just, and I just need to do a better job about investing in those relationships more often.
Well, and I think it depends. I mean, obviously you have to have, I think especially with kids our age, like it's important to have a routine. And that's why like on a school night, most likely I'm not going to go do something. So if my friends are like, hey, we're all going to dinner, probably I'm not going to go. I think that it's really important to like maintain that routine, but also give your kids a chance to have a little variety and visit new places, and exposes them to different personalities and different lifestyles and all of that.
That's good. I appreciate that. Okay, well, hopefully that answered your question, or at least gave you something to think about, viewer, because I know it definitely did me as well. So yeah, appreciate the wisdom.
Something to be encouraged by.
Okay, so on the last episode, I shared a little bit about myself and answered, some of your rapid fire questions. So I think everyone's probably waiting on bated breath to hear all about you. So let's hear a little bit of your backstory, and then I'll ask you some.
Wait, you have questions?
I'm gonna come up with them on the spot, and they're gonna be really good.
Interesting. Now I'm intrigued. Okay, so what do you need to learn about Anthony? Well, the big thing I think with me that I'll just share today, because a lot of my story, I guess I'm like, well, I was going to say it goes back to my childhood, but like, duh, everybody's story goes back to their childhood. But there's like aspects of it that we'll probably talk about like on a future episode of the podcast. But I think I want to just kind of share specifically my journey the last 5 or 6 years, because those last 5 or 6 years have really been some of the most important times of my life, that really have shaped, I guess, who I am now. In a lot of ways, even though like I'm in my early 30s, like it wasn't just until recently that I can finally sit and say like, this is Anthony, this is who he is, This is how he thinks, this is how he functions. So basically, but going back the last 5 or 6 years, I was in a spot where I was just now a newly single dad. I think I said this a couple episodes ago, but there's a time within like 3, maybe 4 months, I went from like having like, I literally, people had like a white picket fence around my house back when I was married, back when I was working in my old job that I used to do. I literally had 2 kids, wife, white picket fence, dog, all of the American dream crap. From within that to like literally within months, like we ended up selling the house. We ended up going through the divorce. I stepped out of my career because of just all the crazy stuff happening at my home. And then I got like a bad infection in my arm. So I was in the hospital for a while and couldn't like really spend a whole lot of time figuring out my next chapter because I was, down and out.
Definitely made it extra hard.
So it was tough. So I remember that summer when so all that probably started around like October, November, whatever year that was. And then it kind of went to where that following summer, I was just chilling at my apartment with 2 little kids. So they were at that time maybe like 2, 3 years old, maybe younger than that. I don't remember. Yeah. And I was just in survival mode. And one thing that I would constantly, I guess, do was like, instead of like spending some real time investing in like myself in this new reality and trying to like reevaluate things within me, I guess constantly what I would do is I would still put myself in positions where I had to, I guess, put on like a facade, put on an image to everybody in the outside world, even though internally I had no idea like who I was and what was going on. And a lot of that came from like I would take like certain jobs. I worked for like nonprofits for a long time. And then I also like started, I guess technically my own business, doing some like blogging stuff. But through all of that career stuff that I was now moving into, I still like in doing my nonprofit stuff would have to show up and be a certain person when I was at work. And I always felt like I needed to like have the smile and everything's good and everything's legit. And then when I was doing my blogging stuff, I would have to show up and be a certain person. And I got like known as like a certain person around town and had to maintain that image to where it just became, and then like I guess to kind of talk a little bit about my story before the last 5 years, like a lot of it involved being like heavily involved with like religious stuff and church and that upbringing. So naturally you can kind of assume there's a lot of like image stuff that has to be maintained or upkept when you're in that sort of circle. And so it just got exhausting to where I just looked and I'm like, why do I keep putting myself in situations, whether through the career, through just my social circle, whatever, to where like I can't truly just function as like me. And then I realized like, well, like I think I keep doing that because I just don't truly even know who I am. And I never took the time to figure that out, because when I was married, when I had the white picket fence house, I was just kind of living and functioning as a certain person. Then when I stepped out of that, I was in like survival mode, but instead of like doing a lot of self-care within me, I just kept putting myself in situations where I just had to like show up and act like I had everything figured out and everything was like legit. And I just kept doing that over and over and getting in that cycle of putting on this facade, to where it wasn't until maybe like a couple of years ago, maybe like a year and a half ago, I stepped out of like all of those roles career-wise. I wasn't working for nonprofits anymore. I was just kind of in a crossroads to where I was like, you know what do I want to start doing right now? What do I want to do? Because I don't think I want to do these jobs anymore where I feel like I have to show up and be like a certain like squeaky clean Anthony anymore. Right. And I stepped out of a lot of other social stuff. And that's when my friend, he was working at the company that I'm working for now. It's like a medical equipment company. But basically, he introduced me to the people to get that job, because he works for the same company, got that job, started that job beginning of 2023, like very beginning of 2023. And it was the first time in a while where my whole 9 to 5 was like, I sit down on a computer, I type a bunch of stuff, I make phone calls, but they have nothing to do with me. I'm not selling myself. They don't even see my face because it's all remote. It's all online. So I don't even have to I could wear my PJs to work if I wanted to. And so doing that for a year, all of last year, was like, oh, okay, so now my bills are getting paid without me having to put on an image for anybody. Mm-hmm. And so it forced me almost to spend like a good chunk of basically all of last year being able to really diagnose who I am and who Anthony is, and who he wants to be, and the type of dad he wants to be, and the type of person he wants to be in society. It really forced me just to spend a whole year basically just with myself, right, and figuring out who I am. And so towards the end of last year, I kind of really got a good sense after 9 months of living with all of that. Got a good sense of I think I see who Anthony is for the first time in a long time. And I think I finally am comfortable showing up and being like, hey, this is who I am. This is Anthony. And I'm not going to worry about how other people perceive that. I'm not going to worry about reputations and images and all this sort of things. I'm just going to show up and I'm just going to be me, because it's just so exhausting functioning as somebody that you're not, or not truly understanding yourself. And so that also just means hey, I'm just going to put myself out there, and that just might mean certain relationships change. That also just might mean that certain things that I choose to spend my time change and get altered and stuff like that. But it really has been freeing the last year and a half, for the first time really maybe in my whole life, just to show up and to be comfortable within my own skin, and to know that, this is Anthony, and I think he's pretty cool.
I like it.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Ready for some questions?
Ready, let's do it.
Okay, rapid fire.
All right, let's
Top
go.
of my head. I didn't prepare for this.
I know, that's fine.
Favorite color?
Oh, blue. I love me some blue, which is why.
Which shade of blue? That's important.
It's like a dark navy type blue. Yes, I have my sunglasses. Yes.
Look at that.
Yes, I don't know if you can see in the camera, but her pants. That's with actually, blue and white. I don't know if you can see on camera. She has white.
I really
Converse
nailed
on.
it with the outfit
blue
today.
and white. That is my favorite color combo. That specific dark blue with white. Peak.
What do you think is the most reckless thing you've ever done?
The most reckless thing I have ever done. All right, let me think about this for
This
a
is payback
sec.
for the most embarrassing.
Oh yeah, well the
question.
most embarrassing thing I could. That one's easy.
You've
for
got
me.
that one just ready, locked and loaded.
Oh yes. I was doing foot squats for football, like running the tires. Like you squat down to run the tires. But I was wearing jeans for some reason when I was doing that in middle school. And when
that
I
makes
squatted,
sense for a middle school kid.
my jeans ripped down the back and my underwear poofed. I was wearing like whitey tighties and they popped out of the back of my jeans like an airbag. So yeah.
That is really embarrassing.
Yeah, but the most
That one really stuck with you, huh?
I still have trauma today. Yeah, it still haunts me today. That's why I don't wear whitey tighties. That's the reason why I don't wear whitey tighties anymore.
Had to give them up after that.
Yes, stressful time.
So we basically started off the same. I started off without a job. You started off without a job.
We started off like from
look
scratch.
at us now.
And look at us now. I mean, some people might look and be like,
I'm sitting in my backyard with my white picket fence.
Yeah, you have a white picket
that
fence.
I pay for all by myself. Look at this.
See? So people, you should be. This is all why I want to share stories, because hopefully, maybe we shared this on a couple episodes ago on the podcast, talking about what to look for when you're just at the beginning of figuring it out. So hopefully, maybe if you're in that sense, that like us, like Anthony 5 or 6 years ago when he was just going through all that mess I brought up, he didn't know which way was up. He couldn't tell you what color the sky was. Like he was a mess. He like was just literally like throwing anything against the wall to see what his life was going to be. But now, he's good. He's awesome. So
that's cool.
Any other questions? Do you have anything else?
What side of TikTok are you on currently?
My TikTok, for some reason, thinks I'm a teacher, which I'm not. I love teachers, but I get a lot of teacher TikToks. For some reason, my algorithm thinks I'm a teacher, so I get to see what a lot of all you teachers go through. So kudos to you, because does not seem like an easy job
Deep in teacher
whatsoever.
talk, huh?
Yeah, I get a lot of teacher stuff. My TikTok is a mess,
I feel like mine is like so all over the place.
Yeah.
Like I think I've officially confused the algorithm at this point. Like I've got like slime videos. I can't lie, I love a slime video.
You
I
sound
think
just
they're
like
so
that's
satisfying.
again another reason why kids probably think you're cool, because that's just them.
I'm like, I love a slime video, but then I'll have like the saddest video anyone's ever made about like their dog dying, and so then I'm crying, and then like the next thing I know, it's like something so insane and weird, and I'm like, it's like really just the most insane thing to sit and scroll through my TikTok For You page. Like everyone will be like, oh, I saw this video, and I'm like, that is not what my TikTok's like. Like my TikTok is so wild.
Yeah. It's always funny when sometimes people expose themselves, especially like older people, conservative people I know.
Oh yeah.
They'll be like, oh, I hate TikTok because it's all like women shaking their ass in bikinis. And it's like,
I'm like, I never see that.
No, that's your TikTok.
It's targeted to you for a reason.
Your algorithm gave you that for a reason,
Yeah.
buddy. So I think you kind of exposed yourself.
I think that's so funny.
You're not beating those allegations.
I don't know what
buddy.
I'm exposing about myself. That like my special interests are the same as 8-year-olds, I guess. But
yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, you're just like an 8-year-old at heart.
I really am. I'm either I have 8-year-old hobbies or I have old lady hobbies, and there's no in between. So
yes, a lot. And I also get a lot of media stuff, how to grow on social media. But I guess it knows of the show.
The business TikToks that I follow have a lot of that, or that I run. Yeah, because I run a couple of accounts for my work. But yeah.
I don't know. So maybe I saved some of those growing on digital media TikToks because I want to learn how to grow the show, expand it.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'm doing a good job. Hopefully we're doing a good job. But hopefully you all out there can help us achieve those goals, do all the things. I'm just saying all the stuff those TikToks tell me to say over and over. So like, hey, tell your audience to help you. And I'm like, okay, cool. I got you. But I know you all out there, you got us. Hopefully you love us. You appreciate us. We love you. We appreciate you. We're thankful that you're able to join us for another episode of the Single Parents Podcast. Appreciate your time. Appreciate you. Appreciate your energy. Steph, anything else before we call it good?
I think with you being on Teacher Talk, go tell a teacher thank you today.
Boom. I like that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Seriously, some of those videos
Really?
they talk about, I'm like, how?
Really, thank your teachers.
Like, kudos to you guys. Should be getting paid way more money.
Oh yeah.
And you're not, and that sucks, and that's not right. That's not good. So yes,
Yeah.
I agree.
That's all I got.
Go think a teacher. And that's going to get ready to do it for another episode of the Single Parents Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, you all out there, just stay beautiful. Bye.